banni si les libéraux sont réélus. Ça va coûter plus cher pour tous les produits.
That's Pierre Poilievre speaking right now in North York, making an announcement about a change to the capital gains tax. He proposing there would be no tax if Canadian businesses reinvest in Canada. This comes after some stories over the past 24 hours criticizing the Conservative leader and his campaign for not talking enough about Donald Trump in the wake of polls that are showing that they are now trailing the Liberals. So did this past week help or hurt any of the parties? Let's bring in Eric Grenier to break all that down. He's a polls and elections analyst, founder of the Writ, and he also, of course, publishes CBC News Poll Tracker for us many times a week now. You're doing that, Eric. Let's talk about where the Poll Tracker stands this morning.
Yeah, well, it does still show that the Liberals have the lead. At the beginning of this campaign, they were narrowly ahead in the poll tracker. Now that gap between them and the Conservatives stands at a little bit over 3 points. So right now we have the Liberals leading with about 41%. The Conservatives have really stabilized at around 38% support, and the NDP has fallen now to 9%. And that 9% is one of the reasons that the Liberals are in a strong position right now to win a majority government. Right now we project they'd win over 190 seats. You only need 172 to form that majority government. The Conservatives win somewhere around 120, 125, and the NDP could be in single digits. And that NDP number remains one of the more important ones in all of this because 38% support for the Conservatives. In the past, it's usually enough to win an election. But when the NDP is as low as this, the Liberals are in the driver's seat.
Wow. Okay. And certainly Ontario is the big part of the big story here. It's always a battleground, but it is certainly a path to victory for the Liberals if they're going to get to those numbers that you're talking about. Where do things stand in Ontario?
Yeah, Ontario has been really, again, one of the driving forces behind the Liberals and their strong polling right now. We have them right now with 5-point lead over the Conservatives, so about 45% to 40% for the Conservatives, and the NDP, again, very low in Ontario at about 10%. And with those kinds of numbers, the Liberals could win about 80 seats in the province. There are 122 in Ontario. Another 40 would go to the Conservatives. So that is the base right now that would give the Liberals a solid position to win that majority. They're also doing very well in Quebec, in Atlantic Canada, and it is a neck-and-neck race in British Columbia. Wow. So those pillars are what would give the Mark Carney a chance to remain as Prime Minister after this election's over.
I'm going to throw this question at you. It wasn't planned, but I know you can handle it. Is there a chance that the Liberals are peaking too soon? Is that a possibility here? Because we're only in week 2 and they're at these kind of numbers. I don't know whether that's something that they can sustain.
Yeah, I think that would be a concern that they would have, that obviously you want to have that momentum rolling right into the end on election day. Yeah. Now, we could see that things could stabilize at this level. One of the things that I think we see from all of the polls is there's not a lot of reasons to believe, at least at this stage, that the Liberals have a lot of vulnerabilities. Because Mark Carney polls better than Pierre Poilievre on preferred Prime Minister than the Liberals do against the Conservatives. We see better personal numbers for Mark Carney versus Poilievre. And we've also seen that government satisfaction rating for the Liberals has increased. The desire for change has gone down. So you don't see a lot of signs, bubbling below the surface that we're in the midst of a change that just is about to happen. But it is still 4 weeks to go. And we both know that lots can happen in 4 weeks on the campaign trail.
We do. Eric, it's so nice to see you. I'm glad we have this regular date set up. Have a good rest of your Sunday. Appreciate it.
All right, thanks.
Party leaders already out and about for week 2 of the election campaign and bracing for more tariff news from Donald Trump this week. Conservative sources also telling CBC News about some infighting within that campaign, hoping to try and change the strategy. So where does that leave us? Leave the race at the start of week 2. Let's bring in our special election panel. Mary Ng is a former Liberal cabinet minister, James Moore, a former Conservative cabinet minister, and Randall Garrison is a former NDP MP. A good group of people to talk to on this day. Nice to see you all. Appreciate you doing this. James and Randall in particular, because it's much earlier out there. Mary, I'll start with you, though. So obviously Donald Trump had a big impact on the end of the first week of campaigning. Mr. Carney spoke with him for the first time. How much of this race do you think is about responding to Donald Trump?
Well, I think this is a really important question, and it's on the minds of every Canadian across the country, which is how do we make sure that the country remains strong? How do we defend the country? And how do we get out from these punishing tariffs that the United States is putting on Canada? So it is on the hearts and minds of Canadians all across the country. And I think that is the issue and the question that Mark Carney is addressing in every in every campaign stop that he's making across the country.
Yeah, and James Moore, this comes obviously after Conservatives, and not just Corey Teneycke, other Conservative sources too, told The Globe and CBC and Global that they are not sure that the campaign strategy for the Conservatives has been the right one. And they'd like to see Pierre Poilievre pivot more to talking about Donald Trump. Do you think that's going to happen, and what do you make of that criticism?
Well, I mean, three things have happened as a counterbalance to Pierre Poilievre's leadership. One is Justin Trudeau is gone, Mark Carney has arrived, and Donald Trump endures. Yeah. And so those three combinations on all three of them have switched to the other side. So yeah, it does cause a little bit of a shift in the equilibrium of your messaging and your presentation and what you want to emphasize. But of course, there's no doubt that Donald Trump is the dominant question. He is the issue in front of us. And, in a lot of election campaigns, Rosie, as you know, often political parties will say, well, this election is about climate change and childcare. And another party says, well, this election is about crime and taxes. No, the voters are very, very clearly saying we know what this election is about. It's about the president of the United States, his threat on Canada, and we want to hear from you and look at you very clearly and get a sense of how you're going to present, what you're going to say, how you're going to act on a daily basis with this 4-year drama that we're going to have as a president of the United States. And people are looking very closely, and they want to make the right choice.
So you seem to all agree on that. Randall Garrison, I'll get your take. Do you think that is the ballot box question? And then how challenging is that for the NDP, who's never formed government, to punch through if that is in fact the question?
Well, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I guess I would slightly disagree. I think Canadians are capable of thinking about more than one thing at a time. And there's no doubt at this point in the campaign that the actions of Trump are predominant. But if you look at the polls, people are also saying in nearly as high numbers that the cost of living, the cost of just trying to get by, is also a very serious concern. So we'll see how this campaign develops. Again, it's very, very early days. And for New Democrats, we're going to continue to talk about the things that we have done in the Parliament in the past that help protect Canadians from that increasing cost of living.
Yeah, I mean, I think that both of those things are true, that yes, affordability remains important, but it is now sort of in the frame of Donald Trump, right? Because it could even get worse if more tariffs go into place. So what would you expect to see from the Liberals this week, Mary Ann, given that this April 2nd deadline is coming? You were just the trade minister, so you have a good sense of what kind of response we might see.
Well, I know that the team is working hard and continues to work hard. In fact, if you look at Mark Carney this week, he has had to step back into the Prime Minister's shoes for a couple of days to deal with this issue very specifically. That also goes for the cabinet ministers who have the files, whether you're foreign affairs or international trade or finance or industry. They're going to have to do both those things. But what you're seeing in this last week is what Mark Carney has laid out for the Liberals in terms of how to make Canada stronger, having a fund and an investment to deal with infrastructure and trade diversification, spending on defense, putting out investments and supports to help workers. I think that work has got to continue and will continue, and I think you're going to see that in the weeks to come. And the work will intensify between the Trade Minister and the Secretary of Commerce, as you heard from the Prime Minister, which is to intensify those conversations with the objective. We must have the objective of removing these tariffs. They are punishing on Canadians, but they certainly are equivalent to a tax on Americans. You've seen, we may not see them here in Canada, but there is a very a comprehensive ad campaign that has gone on in the United States that essentially says tariffs are taxes, and we've got to apply as much pressure as possible so that the Americans understand that tariffs are actually a tax on them and it makes life more expensive for them. I expect that they're going to have to do double duty as they're, even during an election campaign to do that work, and at the same time put their initiatives in front of Canadians so that Mr. Carney and the Liberal Party can get a strong mandate from Canadians.
James Moore, how much of an advantage or a risk is it for the Liberal leader to have to deal with this also as Prime Minister, especially this week when really the focus will again be mostly on tariffs for most of the week?
Dealing with the fact that Donald Trump is president?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's a huge advantage. I mean,
Yeah.
I just think that's the reality, right? I mean, it's, so far I think that's been the case. The people talk about, the caretaker convention. He has to be prime minister. Then he also has to be Liberal leader. He has to go. He loves it. He loves it because he's not ever been elected to office before, and the ability to toggle the switch back and forth and be one, then be the other, allows him to present himself. He doesn't have to paint a picture of what he would look like as prime minister on a given day. He gets to be prime minister, then he gets to be a candidate, and he sort of gets to showcase what he looks like in the most positive light, juxtaposed relative to Donald Trump. So that's a good thing. I would just comment, by the way, I agree with what Randall said a minute ago about that still cost of living issues are dominant. Where it becomes a challenge is that where people may pivot from the cost of living issues being a dominant issue in this campaign because of the inflation crisis and Liberal mismanagement over 10 years. Now people might start thinking, particularly after the April 2 tariffs, to say, yeah, cost of living is an issue, and the new threat to cost of living is Donald Trump. And so they can pivot that brain over. And I think the challenge for Pierre Poilievre has plenty of ammunition to talk about it, is the fact that in the last 10 years, Canada has gone back dramatically relative to all of our competitors, not just in the G7, but frankly, most of the OECD. When you look at take-home pay, you look at savings rates, you look at per capita GDP, all of the economic indicators, all of them. For the last 10 years under Justin Trudeau, Canada has gone dramatically backwards, and we have been left really vulnerable. And it's a statistical, empirical, economic fact. It's not a partisan opinion. The evidence is everywhere. And so I think Pierre has a strong card to play, and strong hand to play there, rather. Yeah. And how he meets out those cards over the next few weeks is going to be critical to his success.
And Randall, I mean, obviously the polls are not doing great for the NDP, and I don't mean to just ask you about polls, but it does seem to be a challenge right now for Jagmeet Singh. What do you think he needs to do to get Canadians to pay attention to him again and consider him again?
Well, a campaign gives Jagmeet Singh equal time with the other leaders, something we don't always get. So I think we'll see things move and change during the campaign. And this is obviously a very volatile campaign. And when you look at the polls, half the people who said who they're going to vote for say they might change their mind by election day. So there's a lot of time to come. And I think what James has said, I often agree with him, but in this case, I don't agree that Canadian voters aren't going to be looking backward. They're going to be looking forward. And they know that Trump is going to trump, whatever that means, whatever that is. He loves tariffs. He's going to move forward. Yeah. So at some point, people have to ask themselves, who's going to help protect Canadians from the adverse effects of those tariffs? And what is it people are proposing to do to meet the cost of living crisis for ordinary families and seniors? And I think that's what you'll see Jagmeet focus on.
Okay, a last quick question to Mary Ang. Lots of your colleagues decided that they were going to run again, Mary Ang, and you have stayed firmly in the retirement zone. Is that where you're staying?
It is where I'm staying, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to let you all go. Again, thank you to our West Coasters for getting up early. Nice to see you all. Appreciate your time.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.